President Hakainde Hichilema has been advised to fire those that are failing to deliver, no matter how much he loves them. And Socialist Party leader Fred Membe has condemned the violence by the UPND against the PF youths during the Youth Day celebrations in Kitwe. And now the news in detail. United States of America Vice President Kamala Harris is scheduled to travel to Zambia for a work visit. In a press statement issued by the White House, Special Assistant to the President and Press Secretary to the Vice President of the United States, Kristen Allen, disclosed that the U.S. Vice President and Second Gentleman Douglas Emhoff will travel to Accra, Ghana, Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, and Lusaka, Zambia to and from 25th March to 2nd April. Ms. Allen stated that the Vice President's visit will build on the recent U.S.-Africa Leadership Summit that President Biden hosted in Washington in December 2022. She says the trip will strengthen the United States' partnerships throughout Africa and advance its shared efforts on security and economic prosperity. Ms. Allen says throughout the trip, in partnership with the American government and private sector, the Vice President will advance efforts to expand access to digital economy, support climate adaptation and resilience, and strengthen business ties and investment, including thorough innovation, entrepreneurship, and economic empowerment of women. Ms. Allen has further noted that the for them to concentrate on working. Bishop Mambo has told QTV News in an interview that the president is doing well, but those surrounding him are not helping him. He says it is worrying that some government officials are failing to tell the nation the policy pronouncement the president is making. Bishop Mambo has charged that the majority people at State House are passengers. And Bishop Mambo has advised the ruling United Party for National Development to stop blaming the former ruling Patriotic Front over the challenges facing the country.
So I think, and they should work with you. I've known people that I know, they said that, but Headman Mambo, if you call our laborers, our friends in State House, my journalists Wanzan, just a phone, they don't answer. And when you see them, you say, no, I answer. They don't answer those people. It's too early for them. What is the fear of unknown? What is it for? You're in power. It's like the president, he has 5 years. Whether you call him names, but it's respect also, because he has done his best. Public Order Act, the judiciary must reform, and the cadres out, and I'm working very hard in my chamber, because I know I can go to Soweto without being harassed. So you talk a lot, you talk for this one and so on, but I can sell with respect. Now, for them, really, it's a job with the taxpayer, including myself. When I buy bread, there's a VAT. They should be in a position to deliver. You cannot, I can also ask you a question, journalist. Have you ever called your friend in State House? Do they pick your phone? So all I can say is that, Your Excellency, what we want to see this year is those who don't deliver, no matter how you love them, fulfill your promise, because people will be observing one thing. If a PS is not working, are you going to keep him? If a director is not working, are you going to keep him? Because the army now they have are those cadres from the ruling party who are saying, Mativala. They have not been forgotten, but they can't even explain that there's the CDF and how you can obtain CDF. So, all they are happy about is I got a vehicle for my wife, the whole world must know what. But that's your vehicle with your wife, what should I know? I want to see development. I want to see bread and butter for my villagers, for my core members in the body of Christ, regardless. And we want also peace, and we want also information flowing. Because once you have that, why should the chiefs and say the road to State House is very bumpy? All these things should come to an end, and that's their way to do so. If they don't, some of us will start talking.
Minister of Infrastructure, Housing and Urban Development, Charles Midubi, has announced government's intention to make the Lusaka-Livingstone Road the dual carriageway. Mr. Midubi is hoping that the Lusaka-Livingstone dual carriageway will be done under public-private partnership PPP procurement model. He says it is pointless to upgrade the Lusaka-Ndola Road into a dual carriageway, leaving out the Lusaka-Livingstone Road. And the minister has revealed that there is sufficient interest from potential investors to upgrade the Mutanda-Munilunga-Ikelengi-Jimbe border road using public-private partnership model. Housing and Infrastructure Development Minister Charles Midubi says government shall also progress Solwezi to Kipushi Road, about 125 kilometers to the border, as a public-private partnership project. Further, Mr. Midubi said government wants to open up from Mutambo and Chama Lundazi and ensure that the Lundazi-Chipata Road is operational. He says other roads being considered for upgrade to international bituminous standard using PPP include the Chingola-Chilabombwe Kasumbalesa, which he said was the first PPP concession agreement signed by the UPND administration. The Drug Enforcement Commission, through its Anti-Money Laundering Investigations Unit, in collaboration with the Zambia Information and Communications Technology Authority, ZICTA, has arrested the 3 Zambians and 1 Chinese national for money laundering involving over 5 million kwacha. The Commission has formally jointly charged and arrested Mary Maimba, a human resource manager, aged 32, of Chelston Green, Geoffrey Chiweza, aged 29, of Kaunda Square Stage 1, Raymond Muluti, the translator, aged 22, of Kamala South, and Galgrefi, a quantity controller, aged 35, of North Mid, for accessing an electronic communications network or electronic communications service contrary to the laws of Zambia. Commission Public Relations Officer Hussein Khan says the suspects were found in possession of 4 newly acquired and imported SIM-box machines. Mr. Khan says that this illegal business was disguised by purporting that they were operating a money lending business named Vanisho Money Lending. He says the bank account of Vanisho has been frozen with a balance of over 5.3 million kwacha, suspected of being proceeds of crime, while the 4 are on bond and will appear in court soon.
That Mary Maimba jointly and whilst acting together with Geoffrey Chiweza, Raymond Muluti, Guza Ofei, and other persons unknown, on dates unknown but between 1st November 2022 and 6th March 2023, fraudulently accessed the electronic communication network of a non-mobile service provider by employing, deploying, and licensed unauthorized SIM boxes and managed to terminate international calls coming into Zambia, causing them to be treated and charged as local calls, thereby gaining financially through the difference. Further, the suspects were found in possession of 4 newly acquired and imported SIM box machines. This illegal business was disguised by purporting that they were operating a money lending business named Vansiho Money Lending. The bank account of Vansiho has been frozen with a balance of 5,360,288 kwacha and 93 ngwe, suspected of being proceeds of crime. The 4 are on bond and
Socialist Party leader Fred Membe has condemned the violence by the UPND against the PF youth during the Youth Day celebrations in Kitwe. Dr. Membe says those behind the act should be condemned and punished in the same manner the police could have arrested the perpetrators if they were PF members. Meanwhile, Dr. Membe charged that the UPND is a violent political party and that it will increasingly get more and more violent as its general political support diminishes. Dr. Membe warned that the UPND, like the PF, will pay a very high political price for it. He says in a multi-party political dispensation, violence should never be deployed as a political strategy or tactic against to silence a political opponent.
Those behind that violence can easily be found. If the violence was perpetrated by PF against UPND, arrests would by now have been made. But this is what happens when you have a police that is led by officers who are selected predominantly from one region of our country and are supporters or sympathizers of the ruling party. The UPND is a very violent political party. and it will increasingly get more and more violent as this general political support diminishes. But Zambians don't generally like violence, and the UPND will ultimately, like the PF did, pay a very high price for political violence. In a multi-party political dispensation, we don't all have to share the same views or support the same political parties.
When reached for a comment, UPND National Deputy Youth Chairman Trevor Mwende says the party is investigating the alleged attack of Patriotic Front youths by suspected UPND youths and will issue a comprehensive statement in due course.
Do not have details of what transpired on the ground where people engaged in violence. First of all, these Zambians that engage in political violence or any form of violence, they must understand that besides politics, we are first of all Zambians. And that being the case, we must all be given an equal chance to do what is right and correct, which is making sure that we promote the country in unity, in the spirit of one Zambia, one nation, rather than constantly fighting time and again. It's illogical. It's not what befits the status of us that call ourselves as youth of this country. Because this country needs all of us to live in harmony.
Minister of Health Director of Infectious Diseases Lloyd Mulenga says the country will receive the new ARV injectable called Cabotrevir in October this year. Professor Mulenga, who is also Acting Director General for the National AIDS Council, says that Zambia will this year receive this long-awaited, long-acting ARV, which is a new injectable ARV offered for prevention of HIV among people at high risk of acquiring the virus through a method of preventing HIV called pre-exposure prophylaxis. Speaking after the closure of the Country Operational Plan, COP23, co-planning meeting in South Africa, Professor Mlenga says during the address of the World AIDS Day, President Hakainde Hichilema instructed the Ministry of Health to enhance HIV prevention, including accelerating the introduction of the injectable ARVs. He adds that the planned arrival of the drug is in response of the presidential directive, but also the urgent need for enhancing prevention. Zambia was picked as one of the 5 countries in the world by the United States government to be supported with the procurement of a long-acting injectable ARV called Cabotrevir this year. This is contained in a statement issued by Tamara Nyerinda, the First Secretary for Press and Public Relations at the Zambian High Commission in South Africa. The Civic Forum on Housing and Habitat in Zambia has observed that Zambia is most likely to fail to achieve Sustainable Development Goal number 11 if it fails to put in place the right measures. Sustainable Development Goal number 11 seeks to make cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Organization Executive Director Grace Mutonga notes with concern that the implementation of the national housing policy has remained poor, thereby making the effective housing development a far-fetched dream. Ms. Mutonga says there is need to facilitate an effective system to make it easy for every Zambian to own a house. She has proposed that part of the Constituency Development Fund, CDF, can be used towards facilitating the construction of social housing in the country. The Zambia Compulsory Standards Agency has started the process of increasing the number of compulsory standards in a bid to enhance consumer protection. Agency Head Communication Brian Hatioka says this is in response to the increasing number of products on the market, especially those merchandise who require regulatory intervention for enhanced protection of consumers. Mr. Hatioka says by having more compulsory standards, the agency will have a wider scope of covering more products in the country. Mr. Hatioka says currently there are 61 products covered under the agency regulatory intervention.
Further, I wish to inform the nation that the agency will enhance enforcement activities on portable spirits, which we started regulating in 2021, following the issuance of Statutory Instrument number 18 of 2020. The implementation of more enforcement activity, especially on this standard, is aimed at increasing compliance levels for enhanced safety of consumers. Just last week on Friday, we participated in the Consumer Rights Exhibition Day at Levy Junction Mall, where we sensitized the public on these issues and other aspects regarding the mandate of the agency. The agency is, among others, mandated to educate the public on compulsory standards and provide public information for the protection of consumers on products and services which do not comply with Compulsory Standards Act number 3 of 2017. The exhibition we had on Friday was held under the theme Empowering Consumers Through Clean Energy Transitions. I thank you all.
Several hectares of maize fields in Gwembe district have been severely affected due to the dry spells that have hit the area. The lack of rains, coupled with excessive heat levels being experienced in the district, has left several maize fields seriously affected. Speaking after he inspected some maize fields, Area Member of Parliament Tyson Simunzili says the development is worrisome as it threatens food security in the area. Mr. Simunzili is concerned that most maize fields have dried up following a long dry spell which the district is experiencing for more than 2 weeks now. He has since appealed to the Disaster Management and Mitigation Unit to urgently carry out an assessment to ascertain the extent of damage and ensure that mitigation measures are in place. And speaking on behalf of the other village headman Chifumbi has urged government to urgently provide relief food for the people whose crops have been affected.
This year's rain season had started very well. Farmers planted and we had almost 100% germination. And the crops were growing extremely well in the months of January and February. Alas, when it came to March, we were hit by drought. And a lot of fields, at the time that the maize was tasseling, at the time that the maize was blooming so that they could make the actual cobs, the maize has dried. And this scenario you see behind in the background, this is what constitutes a lot of fields in Gwembe. It is not that the farmers didn't do the work. They did extremely well, and the maize was coming out very well. But this drought that has hit us the entire month of March has brought untold misery. As the nation might be aware, this last year we were hit by floods and drought. This year is one of the worst droughts one can ever think.
The Chapter 1 Foundation has urged members of Parliament, both from the ruling and opposition, to support the proposed public gathering bill which seeks to repeal and replace the controversial Public Order Act when tabled in Parliament. Organization Legal Officer Muleta Kapatiso says the spirit the President showed when he abolished the death penalty and the offense of criminal defamation of the President must continue even on the proposed public gathering bill. He says that the Public Order Act is a colonial piece of legislation which does not represent current standards of human rights and democracy.
Yeah, when they repealed the defamation of the President provision and provisions to do with the death penalty, that spirit continues even as we continue to nurture our democracy this year. And one of the first key issues that we're raising as civil society in this very quarter is the Public Order Act issue. We have communicated our views before that it is a colonial relic. It's a heritage that does not represent current standards of democracy and human rights. And so we urge the government through their numbers and opposition members of Parliament to support this bill, but also that in doing so, as they deliberate in Parliament, they should make reference to the views that were expressed by stakeholders at Mulungushi, so that if there's any difference between what they find on the document presented to them by Cabinet and our colleagues at the Legislative Department, the Ministry of Justice, they will still be able to refer to the actual organic views that were expressed by members of the media, civil society, activists, and opposition political parties. This is very important because this is what will give legitimacy to any product that will be endorsed by Parliament as a public gathering bill. I think we had to make that.
Welcome back. Still in our news, the Center for Trade Policy and Development has welcomed the calls from President Hakainde Hichilema that Zambia needs to have a modern rail line system. During the recent APU Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week in the United Arab Emirates, President Hakainde Hichilema highlighted the need for a lasting solution to the country's rundown and outdated railway network, and emphasized the need for a modern rail network that can carry the bulk of Zambia's cargo and reduce pressure on the country's roads. Organization Executive Director Isaac Mwaipopo says Zambia has for a long time been mobilizing resources to finance the transport sector, and that the huge sums of money has been going towards the road construction, which he said has been costing the country huge sums of money. He explains that a number of machinery that have been passing through the roads have led to damages. He says as the country seeks to support to construct this rail line, it will be able to identify credible partners that can come and partner with the country so that it can modernize the rail line system.
If you look at the positioning of our country, it is a country that is surrounded by a number of neighboring countries. Key among those countries includes the Democratic Republic of Congo. We have countries like Angola, where we're now trying to strengthen our relationship with them. Besides that, we of course have Zimbabwe and Malawi, which have potentially been looking up to Zambia for the supply of various commodities. So as we design a project of this kind, should it get to an advanced level, it would be very strategic that we should consider in terms of the connecting points, so that we can open up this country for business and make transportation of various goods and services a bit more easy.
The Child's Night, an organization that advocates and safeguards minors from child and early marriages, has challenged the relevant authorities not to incubate sexual child abuse cases but expedite investigations. Organization Chairman Raphael Nkoma has observed that sexual child abuse cases take long to be investigated. Mr. Nkoma further says there is need for the police to immediately start investigating the cases immediately they are reported. He says the delay in finalizing sexual child abuse cases have caused the perpetrators to continue roaming in communities and commit other child sexual abuses.
And the police come in immediately, or the government come in immediately when the case happens. Don't incubate the cases. They are difficult to be resuscitated, to start digging them up from where they started. So once the case has been done immediately.
Joe Biden is seeking to reassure Americans as fears of another U.S. banking crisis rise. The president is trying to calm fears after the collapse of both Signature Bank and Silicon Valley Bank. Stock markets around the world are largely down as investors wait to see what happens next. The two bank failures are the second and third worst in U.S. history. A short while ago, President Biden tried to reassure Americans that their banking system is safe.
All customers who had deposits in these banks can rest assured, rest assured they'll be protected and they'll have access to their money as of today. That includes small businesses across the country that bank there and need to make payroll, pay their bills, and stay open for business. No losses will be, and this is an important point, no losses will be borne by the taxpayers. Let me repeat that. No losses will be borne by the taxpayers. Instead, the money will come from the fees that banks pay into the Deposit Insurance Fund. Because of the actions that our regulators have already taken, every American should feel confident that their deposits will be there if and when they need them. Second, the management of these banks will be fired. If the bank is taken over by FDIC, the people running the bank should not work there anymore. Third, investors in the banks will not be protected. They knowingly took a risk, and when the risk didn't pay off, investors lose their money. That's how capitalism works. And fourth, there are important questions of how these banks got into the circumstance in the first place. We must get the full accounting of what happened and why those responsible can be held accountable.